Welcome to Growth Colony, Australia's B2B growth podcast. I'm Alex Hipwell. Each episode, we bring you B2B founders, CMOs, marketing, and sales leaders to find out what makes them successful and what's behind their failures. Let's dive right into today's episode.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Growth Colony. I'm Shahin Hoda with X Growth, and today I'm talking to Eric Vardon, CEO and co-founder at Morphio.ai and co-founder of Arcane, about problems marketers face when they're usually managing large advertising budgets, especially when they're doing it with online platforms. On that note, let's dive in. Eric, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. From lovely Toronto, it's great to have you. Now for those who might not be familiar with yourself or Morphio, can you give us a quick background and intro?
Yeah, I'm assuming that 99% outside of you and me aren't familiar with who I am, but that's okay. So I'm long-standing marketing guy, advertising. Short version is I wanted to build websites back in the mid 90s. So for any of those of you that remember that time frame, it was a while ago, where a rollover was a big deal, and I've been in the business ever since. Was fortunate enough to be in the agency side a few times, starting from my basement to growing some fantastic companies, and the largest being Arcane. At one point, we were one of the fastest growing in North America. We had a lot of focus on driving a huge return for our clients. We started the business on the heels of the last recession reset in 2008 and 9. And, found it a great opportunity where clients were really focused on the return they were getting from their dollars, clearly with not as much money floating around. So that was the first wave, and kind of rode that, up until recently, where obviously the world has changed. And it's been a really fun and interesting experience, growing from zero, me and my business partner in our basements, to 100 people and 15 million in revenue in 5 years, and 3 offices and 5 acquisitions and a whole bunch of other crazy stuff, to building now a sustainable, cash flow positive, profitable business. Took a lot of time and effort, and clearly some gray hair has come from it. Always been involved with many different businesses too. And my focus now is on a company called Morphio, which is built for marketers to really ultimately change the way we work. I think we'll get into a little bit more about what it is that we hope to achieve, but our mission statement is being revamped, and basically it is to create a positive movement where marketers like us can be happier, more effective, and awesome. So that's what Morphio is all about.
What made Morphio happen? Like, what was it? Was it the experience at Arcane, or was something else? How did Morphio come about?
Yeah, I think it came from, there's a few different things. Obviously, it was a need in the agency. I mean, you've got amazing people that we worked with that were always and still are, very busy and running around from meeting to meeting. And ultimately, all we're trying to collectively do is understand our clients' objectives, sit alongside them as their business changes and evolves. I think as an entrepreneur, we put on an additional lens of being very proactively interested and focused on making money for our clients, and get really excited when we can sit down, with the leaders of any business and really help shape their online presence. When we started, it was mainly Google and Facebook, where the spend, and obviously Microsoft for some cases, was the majority of where we spent our time and effort, and the complexity just grew from there, as did the client amounts and the dollars that they were spending, the complexity, and it just compounded. And we found that our bottom line really wasn't increasing, and our top line grew substantially, but the ability to drive the business forward, took us into very manual ways of trying to solve it. And so we had a conversation, I think, it was probably about 2015 or 16, and my business partner and co-founder, John, and I said, there's got to be a better way to scale this business. I mean, we're still relying on manual processes, the same things and the same ways that we've executed over the last 10 or 15 years at that time. And it didn't make any sense. And so we ultimately started down a path in 2015 to look at how machine learning could ultimately help our business be automated. And then from there, it just became sort of an obsession of looking at every piece or part of our business and trying to find ways that we could automate it. And we quickly realized that it wasn't one thing that we as marketers need to do. It's many incremental changes with small percentages that would actually impact and allow us to scale. And that's kind of where Morphio was born from.
Right. Now, I know that you're very passionate about AI and definitely want to talk about that as well. On what you just said over there, the Morphio's title runs defend against marketing failures, right? And what are some of these mistakes that right now comes to mind? You're talking about, hey, there are all these little things that were happening. What were some of these little things? Well, can you give us some examples?
Yeah, I mean, we all, it's become a regular occurrence. I mean, it's things like credit card expires or fails. You've got a campaign going, and you've got a bunch of campaigns launching, and you pause by accident, or you don't pause when the campaign is supposed to end, and you either underspend or you overspend. A couple other examples, tracking and the complexity of managing and analyzing performance is a huge issue. Pixels being dropped, duplicate, analytics views or whatever the case may be. All of this relates to performance being impacted. And whether it's an hour or a day or a week, you're talking in many cases hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And that's something where I was on the other end of a lot of these phone calls with a client saying, "Hey, I just noticed that this happened." In many cases, they catch it first because in agency life we have 100 things we're dealing with, and they have one. And so that is a terrible, terrible phone call or email to get. And as the owner, it generally means, okay, and I can think of unfortunately far too many examples. The worst one being about a $50,000 overspend where it's nobody else's fault except for ours. There's no insurance or protection for an overage like that when somebody went on vacation and thought they hit pause and didn't, and nobody caught it for 2 weeks. So, $50,000 or whatever the example is, it generally comes out of our pocket. And you think of the other way is how much do you have to sell? And you can look at your profit margin. How much do you need to sell to recoup, that ultimately that money that's flowing out the door? And so those are a few examples, and there's many, many more, but those are the kind of things that cause us to be busy, scared, nervous, unhappy, stressed. And why we end up, running around like with our heads cut off is usually dealing with those types of things that take us away from the stuff that we love to do.
And I would imagine right now, first of all, you probably deal with a lot of agencies, and I would imagine right now tackling those challenges and making sure that you kind of address all of those small items that together become this amazing force of driving your business, your agency to the ground becomes even more important considering what is happening right now in the market and buyers becoming a lot more sensitive. Is that what you're seeing? What is happening in the agency world from your lens right now?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, there's outside of, unfortunately, and I hate to even talk about it and hear about it, but a lot of agencies and small and large are failing, and clients have turned off budgets or canceled contracts, and it's just the reality of what we're seeing. And so there's a lot of that, which means displaced marketers, stressed people looking for jobs, founders in many cases either starting something new or having to deal with insolvency, etc. In some cases, though, on the positive side, you have a lot of businesses are rapidly moving to figuring out what their online strategy is. So I think in many cases it outweighs some of the issues that are out there. But most brands have now had to sort of hyper focus in what they need their online presence to do for them. In many cases, they may even completely change or pivot their business to offer something to drive additional or net new revenue through online streams. So, marketing as a whole for a long time has kind of gone unnoticed or shoved to the side as a thing that's kind of nice to have. For the smart brands and for the smart marketers inside, they know the power of what digital marketing attribution and proper tracking and ROI can do and can mean. And I think that, we're putting in now our business into the driver's seat where marketers are really leading strategies going forward. So that's a big opportunity. So I'm hearing and seeing a lot of that, which is super positive. At the same time, finally, adoption, there's been a lot of buzz of AI and machine learning over the last few years, but now it needs to be implemented. Businesses need cost-effective solutions. They need to scale. There's not a lot of team members out there. If you think about it, there's still a massive gap in a lot of jobs that are open. Hopefully more of those will be filled. But in the marketing space, and a lot of that is trying to replace the mundane stuff, the constant analysis. People are having a hard time finding people to fill those roles because it's not a fun job, and it's number crunching all day long. We as marketers, we want to be strategic and have fun and solve client problems or internal problems and issues and opportunities. And so I think there's an adoption for tools, affordable tools that are smart, that's really going to help them be happier in their jobs. And it's nice to see that as a trend.
And on that note, let's talk about AI and the agency world and marketing world, right? I feel like AI is still quite undeveloped in terms of the marketing world and adoption in the marketing world and the agency world. What do you see over there, and what is your experience with agencies adopting AI?
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways I'll answer it. Is there's definitely a learning curve and a comfortability in terms of understanding it and knowing how to trust and pay for a new tool that seems in many cases just way out there, and maybe it's not relevant for my business or whatever the excuse is. But marketers and business owners need an AI strategy. They need to understand it. If you don't, you will fall behind. It is and will take over. So it's definitely on the onus to make sure that everybody feels comfortable. I think the other way is that I'd answer it is that ultimately we say it's a new way to work, and we use an analogy of this check engine light, and I'll use it to make my point. But we used to, and back in the olden days, we'd open the hood and we'd check our spark plugs. We'd make sure there was enough tire pressure in the tires before we would drive. And you get in your car now and you've got this check engine light that tells you if any of that stuff is a problem. And you think of that and you're like, yeah, okay, I get that. That makes sense. I can see, even though I'm not that old, but I can respect it. But that evolution hasn't necessarily impacted the marketing industry, and there are definitely things going on. Don't get me wrong, but it's a notion that we need to be comfortable with the machine, in this case, the computer in the car, giving us information, and now we take that for granted. That's okay. But, I feel estranged when this AI tool is actually giving me more insights than maybe my team ever has. And so that's just going to take time. It's more of that social movement to new processes, new workflow, and in a different way to perform our business that right now we can do in a comfortable way, albeit not scalable, which is making people angry and frustrated and maybe isn't giving us all the results that we hope to achieve. So that, I think, is the biggest challenge whenever you have to move people into a new way to work. Will just take time and education and credibility, and that's definitely coming though.
How should people do that? Like, because I mean, look, it's also a vague concept, right? AI. It's like, what does that mean? It could mean so many different things.
Yeah.
But how do you think should, whether it's in the agency world or it's in the marketing world, so like large department and organization, how do you think they should approach AI? Like if they say, hey, we would like to adopt the as you said, the new way of working, how should they go about doing it?
Well, what we did before we built Morphio was we looked at where we were seeing frustration from our team members. We looked at where the hours were going from our time logs in terms of where people were putting their time versus the impact, and then what we're able to charge. We did a lot of investigation on where we felt that people were just doing busy work, and ultimately where we thought that a machine could do a better job, or at least replace something that we knew the team didn't want to do. And so the point is that there's always trying to find a problem or a hypothesis and trying to solve that with machine learning or AI is a good way to go, because you know what it is that you hope to achieve. If you're just, like I said, I'd like to invest in AI or try AI, well, you don't really have a need. You're just kind of curious. And so I'd always say, look at the business, look at where money's going out the door, or time, or effort, or hours, or ultimately where people are being, frustrated, or what's causing them to not be, have the most impact as team members or employees, and start there and build one case and go and try to solve that business problem with some machine learning. And if that's the very start, machine learning in terms of a computer being able to compute something faster than somebody else is a simple way to ingest it. If we have a problem that we get and it's our business, hopefully that's maybe an example of how we could, business owners could start, or at least give it a chance and use that as an example.
Do you ever find yourself stuck with a B2B problem? Need a second opinion on your next campaign? Or looking for some feedback on that piece of MarTech you're thinking to purchase? Well, that's why we created the Growth Colony Slack channel. This Slack channel is like a small dinner party where you get to meet and mingle with B2B professionals, hear what others are doing, and keep up to date with the latest B2B trends and news. You'll also get access to a range of exclusive content from our podcasts, webinars, and events. The best thing about it, it's all free. If this sounds interesting, head over to growthcolony.org/Slack and sign up. That's growthcolony.org/Slack.
I'd like to also touch on a little bit an Arcane. And again, we touched on it briefly, but some of the mistakes that you've made and some of the issues that you've had over there, right? Mm-hmm. If you would go, if you would go back, right? The go back question. If you would go back in the Arcane days, and the reason I asked this is Morphio coming out of some of the problems that you've experienced over there. If you go back in the Arcane days, what is one thing that you would stop doing sooner rather than later?
Yeah, I mean, I'm building the business sort of young and somewhat experienced, but really not. And I think you make a lot of decisions based on what you believe success to be perceived as. In so many cases, I forget exactly how the line is, but it's something like revenue or sales is vanity, and profitability is reality, or something like that. And so the point I'm trying to make is, you do a lot of hire a bunch of people because you think the headcount matters. You drive top line revenue because you're chasing awards or other things. And it's the hindsight's obviously 2020. But we were lucky. I mean, we were profitable all along the way. Maybe not as much as we could be. So we did a lot of good things. But I think that if we could do it again, it would be more focused, profitable scale versus scale at any cost. And so I think we may have lost some good people. I think we may have lost some really good clients. I think we may have not put as much emphasis as we should have on culture or certain things. And I think we did pretty good at all those. But if I was hindsight, it's probably really around the vanity side of really focusing on a sustainable, profitable business will give you ultimate selection, ultimate power, success, creativity, whatever words that you want to use. Build that foundation. You and I talked about it a few weeks ago. Build that first, create a system of profitability that will really give you the power and the flexibility to take the business where you want it to go. And that is a great place to live. And, learn that maybe the hard way over the last bit of the career. But, that's the one thing I would say in terms of looking back.
Makes sense. And do you think that would become challenging if it's, if the organization is too small and maybe, or you felt like it has to grow in order to have a certain number in the bank account so that it will start focusing on that profitability and culture and so on and so forth, but or no, it can focus on all of those things from the very beginning?
Well, I mean, I think you have to hope that it does all those things, and maybe you can get lucky. And I think in a lot of cases we did get lucky. We had a great group of individuals that have had separate focus in other areas of the business. And we were in constant communication, and we're friends and loved growing the business. And so we supported each other, caught mistakes or issues, or brought up certain things that maybe if you were a solo entrepreneur or didn't have a partner, you would have probably missed or made huge mistakes on. So I think in that case, we got lucky. But I do think you can have it all. It's just really surrounding yourself with great advisors. I'm a huge proponent, of peer networks. I'm in YPO and YPO member for now a few years, and other peer networks prior. And so, having a network as an individual that I can go to be able to confide and have other shared experiences with other individuals that are going through unique, similar, or different things was also something I wish I would have done earlier on. It's been a great addition in the last few years for me. But yeah, so surrounding yourself and working hard and focus, knowing your business, knowing your numbers, having a great finance team, and a little luck along the way doesn't hurt anybody.
Never does. It never does. Okay. And look, last question I want to ask is around your personality and some of the things that you believe in. I've noticed that, from reading some of the material and the chats that we've had, you're and you mentioned it right now, you're very big on community, and you're very big on helping others out. And there's some components of it is marketing, but also I feel like there's a big component of that of what you believe. Like Morphio has a community, and you and the team give a lot away. You've talked about that in some of the articles that I've read. Why is that?
I think a lot of the founding principles of all the businesses we're involved with come from our morals and principles and values that we have as individuals. So I believe that giving back is good karma, and that helping each other, in this case as entrepreneurs, is something that can be a very obviously it feels great, but it can be a very individual way to live. Entrepreneurs many times are very siloed, even if they're surrounded by amazing people. It can be lonely at the top, if you will. And that's something that I experienced, and I feel as though you're, as entrepreneurs too, you're so focused on what's ahead next that sometimes you don't stop, give back, appreciate what you have, and all those kinds of things. So partly it's I love enjoying and talking to people and being around other business owners. I learn just as much, whether they're just starting or been in business for 20 or 30 years. And I've always enjoyed learning from other people, all along the way, whether they're in the same business as me or not. So the active listening part and just the natural curiosity is kind of who I am. And so that would be the other way I would look at it. But, ultimately it comes down to, those shared values and really living up to it. And sometimes, you go through those phases of, your life, and you hit a certain age, and there's certain things that ultimately you want to do. And I think that's a big one. So whether it's direct community, the community of marketers, community of business owners and entrepreneurs, or if it's, passion projects like roller hockey, which I love to do, and golf and other stuff, helping people out makes me feel good. And, I think it's important for us, especially with everything that's going on, to be as humanly positive as possible. So take that for what it is.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. What have been some of the highlights from being part of communities like the Morphio community? You mentioned WPO. Like, what was some of those early experiences that it kind of made it click for you?
I think it's just like this. You walk into a room with a bunch of strangers at a networking thing, and you're lucky enough to find someone that you instantly just get along with. It's a really great feeling, and I have a whole another belief on why that happens, but there's a lot of power in that, and the energy that comes with like-minded people, ultimately I think moves the world forward. And so I think you become a little bit addicted to, surrounding yourself by other people that, you want to be like, or that you want to share with. And, if we all are, filled with energy, and if it's all positive, and you can surround yourself with, people that impact you in a positive way, then yeah, I think that is something that you can't just turn off. And so I always see myself being pretty proactive and being involved in many ways. And again, given that what we're dealing with, where you can't really hug people, you can't really approach people anymore, and you don't know what they look like. It's really hard to deal with for someone like me that would probably randomly hug everybody. But hopefully that'll all lift and change, and we'll go back to the way things should be, and then some. But it's a little bit more on how I look at community.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed that will change. But no, that makes sense, and thank you for sharing that. Okay, so we spoke on a wide range of things. We talked about mistakes in the marketing and advertising world. We talked about AI. We talked about some of the mistakes and lessons and also lastly about community. Is there anything else that you think I didn't cover or I didn't ask that you think it will be valuable to cover here?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's tough to say. I could probably talk forever, but I think from our conversations, I believe that in our space, often we are hired as service executors, and a lot of times you can get into order taking too quickly. And so I'd always say, especially in the lens of agencies and our clients, give the clients the respect that they deserve, and make sure that they know that we're in the same room for a reason. They saw something in each of us that they like, whether it's a service or a way that something was said, or potentially a core value proposition, or whatever the case may be. And so instead of really order taking, I would really challenge to ask those businesses questions and really infiltrate what it is that they hope to achieve. And the more you come back at asking deep questions and doing research and giving a lot of energy towards knowing their business, thinking differently, whether it's right or wrong, I've always believed that level of intimacy can show that you really do care about the business. And I think that is something that, with all of the noise and complexity of digital marketing, that connection to business strategy sometimes gets thrown down the channel or ladder, have you. And so I'd love for everybody that are marketers to bring back that challenge. We are the experts, we know the data, but also just not only get to know your client or the business, but really get to know what it is that they hope to achieve. Ultimately, if they're going to choose a digital marketing company, one versus the other, it's generally because they'll see something in the way that you approach their business that the other hasn't. And if you really put that time and effort in, I think that will help everybody really secure either more happiness in their role or more success as an agency, when they try to grow.
That's very true. And I think that's also true for marketers in organizations as well. I feel like, a lot of situations, in a lot of situations that you find that maybe the upper management will come and all of a sudden dictate something because, what they like or what they think is right, and override some of the, marketing has done market research, understand the customer and all that. But the highest paid person in the room doesn't necessarily feel that's the case, and they might push back and things would change. And I feel like it is agencies, but at the same time, in the marketing world, it is also the marketer and the practitioners in organizations as well that find that challenging, and they got to push back. I really like that.
Yeah, I'd also say, so just on that point, it's like, and that's really what I'm so passionate about now, is that, why would any of us accept to be frustrated and unhappy and busy, in going in and out of Facebook data and Google Analytics and Google Ads all day long, when we don't have to? We all want to think about those big strategies and have time to be creative and problem solve. And sort of, that's the thing that all of us have to think about is, if I didn't have to do those things in the morning for 2 hours, what else would I do with my day? And just start there and say, okay, maybe I can replace those 2 hours, and then I can replace an hour here or 20 minutes there. How much love would you have for your job if you now had 3 or 4 hours in the day not doing the things you don't want to do and enjoying all of that extra time on the things that you love, right? Sounds pretty simple, and that's the challenge.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty simple answer to that as well. All right. Eric, thank you so much for this. Now, if anyone wants to know more about Morphio and what you and the team are doing, what's the best way for them to find out?
Sure, yeah. Just head on over to Morphio.ai, Morph.ai. You can always find me on LinkedIn as well. And just send a message out, much like you did. We'll connect and have some chats. So there you go.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Eric.
Thanks a lot.
Hey, it's Alex again from X Growth. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode. If you enjoyed it, we'd love it if you take a moment to rate us on Apple Podcasts. It would really help get the word out to other B2B professionals. If you're hungry for more B2B content, make sure to join our Slack channel at growthcolony.org/Slack, where we share the latest B2B news, tactics, tips, and chat about problems we're facing in the B2B space and find solutions together. That's growthcolony.org/Slack. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you in the next episode.